So, in 2019, I wanted to read more diversely, more broadly, from lots of different genres. It was one of my goals of the year, and as I discussed in my reviewing my 2019 goals video, I did manage to achieve that. And so I thought that it would be fun to discuss the various different genres I explored this year and how I found them and whether or not I plan to continue reading books in that genre. And spoilers, the answer is mostly yes. In fact, I think it's pretty much exclusively yes. So, as you may know, my preferred genre is fantasy, whether that be middle grade, young adult, adult, epic, high, low, any kind of fantasy you can imagine. I want to read it and will likely love it. And it pretty much dominated my reading, well, throughout my life really, but I wanted this year to try and branch out a little bit, so I managed to read quite a lot of different genres, including horror, mystery, contemporary romance, historical fiction, dystopian, sci-fi, manga and graphic novels. Now, this isn't to say that I didn't ever read any of those genres before, but it was very much the exception rather than the rule, and I've made it a little bit more of a rule this year, I think. So starting off with horror, which is one of the genres that I was most scared, don't mind the pun, to get into. I am a complete wimp. It has to be said, I scare pretty easily. I don't watch horror films. I don't play games that involve horror, and anything in the horror genre is potentially quite difficult for me. But I have read a couple of books that are classified as horror this year, and I do plan to continue testing out the lower end of that genre. I'm not going to jump in with something like It, because, and I know that that's more like psychological thriller, but something like that is just not going to be achievable for me. But this year I did read The Twisted Tree, which is a Norwegian-inspired horror story for middle grade readers, so that worked for me. And I also read Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, which is an adult novel, but it was about sirens and I didn't find it too scary. So I definitely do want to continue in the genre, and if you have any recommendations that are on the lighter end of the horror spectrum, then let me know, because I definitely want to keep trying it out. I know that maybe about 5 years ago or so I read a series of zombie-based novels because I was going through a period of my life where I really enjoyed zombie stories, and I found those not that scary. So if you know of any zombie fiction, maybe that can be my next foray into the horror genre. The next genre that I have historically struggled with is historical fiction. These puns keep coming and I just don't intend them to happen, so you'll have to just forgive me, okay? But historical fiction is something that I really struggle with. I have never found history particularly interesting, probably because throughout school we studied the same periods of history every year for about 10 years of my life, and so I was just incredibly bored. And a lot of historical fiction focuses on those same subjects that I studied in school because they are the most significant historical events, World War I and II being the main ones. So I have really struggled with historical fiction before, but I know that I have at least read one historical fiction this year, and that was Daisy Jones and the Six. And actually I also read Romanov. So Daisy Jones and the Six is a 70s based historical fiction, and Romanov is, I don't know when the Romanovs were alive actually, but it was based on Romanov history. And I really enjoyed both of those. So I think that what I've discovered is the key for me is that I don't dislike historical fiction as a genre in its entirety, but I do need to be looking at a period in my historical fiction that is less familiar to me. So again, any recommendations, please let me know. I'm open to trying historical fiction, and I never thought that I would say that, so I'm really, really glad that I did decide to pick up some historical fiction this year, because I've discovered that actually maybe I don't dislike it, maybe I just need to find the right historical fiction for me. I'm going to very briefly mention science fiction, manga and graphic novels together, because these are genres that I have read from before, and that it's no great surprise that I continued to read from them and enjoyed them. I think I need to read more sci-fi because I always end up enjoying it a lot more than I expect to, and I feel like I forget about it in between all of the fantasy that I read. But I really do enjoy science fiction, and particularly young adult science fiction, so I definitely want to make a conscious effort to read more of that. And as for graphic novels and manga, they're not going to form a major part of my reading, but I do find them really great to help when I'm feeling a little bit of reading fatigue and want something short and easy in between some of the slightly bulkier reads that I dive into. Now I want to talk about romance, because I don't know why I forgot that I love reading romance books. I used to read romance books all the time, and romance elements of fantasy stories have always been really enjoyable for me, so I don't know why I forgot that I really like reading romance, but I'm really glad that I've remembered. I picked up several romance books this year, loved all of them. I feel like romance is just a pretty comfortable space for me, and it's extremely unlikely that I will dislike a romance book. Even if it's problematic, that doesn't really bother me because it's fiction and I don't necessarily look for realistic in fiction because I'm predominantly a fantasy reader. So if realistic was what I was looking for, then clearly I've got problems. So I don't really find problematic romance problematic for me as a reader. So like I said, I pretty much enjoy every romance I ever read, so I don't know why I don't read more of it, and I'm really glad that I rediscovered my love of it this year. And similarly, contemporary, I haven't ever really read contemporary books consistently at any point in my life, but I've realised this year that contemporary is just a really fun, easy, light way to break up the heavy fantasy. And even some of the darker contemporaries, like I read Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman this year, which was pretty dark as contemporaries go. Ditto Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake, I think, was also very heavy, but writing style wise they're a lot easier to digest, and so you can digest these much heavier topics that are sometimes covered in fantasy but in a much lighter way in terms of the actual prose itself, which I quite enjoy. And it's not so info dumpy because you're not sort of doing loads of world building. So I've discovered a love of contemporary literature this year, which I don't know that I necessarily expected, but I'm really enjoying myself reading contemporaries. Then we have mystery, and this is a genre that I have struggled with a little bit more throughout the year. And what I've discovered is that I like mystery that has a fantastical element, but I don't like fantasy that has mostly a mystery-based plot. Does that make sense? I hope so. So straight mystery is very hit or miss for me, and most of the time it's a miss. Throw in some magic or something fantastical and I'm probably going to like it more. Give me a mystery plotline in a fantasy book and I'm generally not impressed because I was picking up a fantasy book, not a mystery. That's quite hypocritical, I realise, but clearly I'm just very picky about the mystery genre, and I'm not saying I'm not going to read any more mystery. I definitely will, and again, if you have any recommendations for me of books that you think I will like, please do leave them down below. But I've discovered this year that mystery is just one of those genres that is a little bit more difficult for me to enjoy. And then ending on a positive note, dystopian. I have rediscovered my love of dystopian this year. I think I read The Hunger Games loved The Hunger Games. I'm actually currently rereading The Hunger Games right now. And then the Divergent series, I really enjoyed that too. And then Dystopian kind of just disappeared for a little while, but the Arc of the Scythe series is Dystopian, and I loved that series. I read Scythe and Thunderhead last year, but I read them again this year and read The Toll and loved that. And also The Kingdom by Jess Rothenberg is arguably dystopian fiction as well, and I really enjoyed that one too. I have a dystopian book on my TBR, which is called We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor Mejia, I think is how you say that person's name. Really sorry if not. And I mean, it's fantasy, but it's fantasy dystopia. I don't know if there are more recently written dystopian books, and if there are, again, let me know. If not, I think I'll probably just go back through the back annals and the backlist of books where dystopian was a thing and read a few more of them, because I really enjoy dystopia. I don't like the endings, usually, but I love it when I'm in it and I hate it when it's over, is basically what I'm saying. On the whole, exploring different genres this year has been a huge success. I've found things that I want to carry on trying. I've found things that I really want to read more of. So if you don't do this, then I would suggest try it out for a few months, a year. Give it a go. You might discover some genres that you never thought of before. And if you've got any other genres that you think that I should try, that I haven't tried out or mentioned in this video, then leave me those recommendations down below. I want a very, very full comment section on this video with loads of recommendations, because I need your help. These aren't genres that I typically read. Ask me for a fantasy recommendation and I've got your back, but on all of the rest of these I need a little help. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks! Bye!